consider this the ultimate kickoff to the midterm discussion that we're going to have.
This could be one of the most expensive races. Watley has said that it might be the most expensive race across the map.
Republicans have a supermajority and have run that state very well on the state level, with one exception, and this is the big problem, is Republicans have not had success in the governorship for quite some time.
One, it's going to be competitive. Two, it's going to be very expensive.
Yeah. Whose operation can bring out a tidal wave of rural Republican voters?
Yep.
Because those are the people that are needed to win this race in the general.
Yeah, you're going to look a lot at where everybody's base of support is, for sure.
Washington politicians are always getting in your wallet. Now they're messing with your credit card. Your credit card and the security it offers are under attack. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill would change the nation's payment system to benefit corporate megastores like Walmart and Target at the expense of everyday Americans. Credit cards keep your payments secure and provide rewards that families use to help make everyday purchases more affordable. The Durbin-Marshall mandates would let corporate megastores cut corners on credit card processing, routing transactions over cheaper, untested networks with weaker security and fewer protections. That means higher risk of fraud, greater chance of stolen personal data, and the loss of rewards programs, just so corporate megastores can pocket billions of dollars in higher profits. Tell Congress to guard your card. Visit guardyourcard.com to take action and learn more.
In America, parents call the shots for their families, not bureaucrats. But the so-called App Store Accountability Act puts your child at risk. This bill requires app stores to collect children's sensitive personal data while taking away power from parents over how their child's data is handled by tech companies. Parents should get to decide if their child's age is shared with apps, not politicians. Parents should attest to their kids' ages, not turn over birth certificates to tech companies. Congress, don't put kids at greater risk online and box parents out of making decisions for their families. Tell your lawmaker to put parents first. There are better ways to keep kids safe. NetChoice is dedicated to making the internet safe for free expression and free enterprise. Learn more at netchoice.org/keep app stores safe.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Good Tuesday to you, and welcome to the Ruthless Friday program from a snowy Washington, D.C. I am Josh Holmes, along with comfortably smug Michael Duncan and John Ashbrook, left to right across your radio dial. A lot of people call in on times like this, not the Ruthless Friday program.
Rain or shine, we are here for our dear listeners and viewers on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're going to do something special for you here today because we're going to do a couple of things. First off, we've been putting off the whole midterm discussion. And that we've had basically every candidate in every state that matters and district that matters call and ask. They want to come talk about their primaries. They want to come talk about the generals, all this kind of stuff. And we've just basically told everybody at this point, let us get to that portion of the program. Because look, with Trump, every day is a news day. And there's been an amazing amount of stuff going on. And we wanted to get through all of that to get to a point where we can focus on things that ultimately matter to you an awful lot, like who the hell your candidates are, who you're going to support. So I think what the next couple of months you can expect from the Ruthless Friday program is for us to talk to an awful lot of people. We'll make it fun, by the way. Because we know, ultimately how you judge these things, there's not a ton of difference between Republican candidates on tone and, basically the overarching view is similar in many regards. But if they come in here and douche it up,
that's the thing.
You can't vote for them.
And I think that's a critical thing is, typically with these candidates, you'll see them on TV and they've got 60 seconds, give your elevator pitch. Okay, thank you for your time. Goodbye. When we bring the candidates in, you get time to actually understand who this is, decide if they're the candidate for you. Because here's the thing is, there's lots of folks who listen to this show who you may not have a senator in cycle. You may be unfortunately cursed to live in a blue state, but I've always advocated for, if you find a candidate that you think is nailing what's important to you, who you feel like is going to make a positive difference for this country, you can support them, even if you're not in that state. And that's part of the reason we love having all these candidates.
Yeah, and as we've come to find out in recent years, a Senate majority is particularly important for a Trump administration. And no more so than here, because we know, as Trump has said, like he's going to get impeached again if Democrats take over the House and Senate. So we're going to start with the Senate. And then we'll do more House stuff as we go. But consider this the ultimate kickoff to the midterm discussion that we're going to have here over a period of months. And, we'll get through, we're going to go through the map a little bit and give us some thoughts and the candidates, some people that you're going to hear from here on the Ruthless Variety program. And then we've got an ultimate great interview here at the end that Smash, you did, that has nothing to do with the map. Has everything to do with law and order.
Yeah, Janine Pirro, who is the attorney for the District of Columbia, and she is knocking heads over there. She is taking crime very seriously, which is something that office hasn't done in quite a long time. Very interesting conversation. The woman has an awful lot of energy, so you won't want to miss that at the end of the show.
Great get, Ash.
Yeah, totally awesome. So you're going to have that as a bonus for all of this. But let's just set the table. We'll start with the Senate. It is a 53-47 breakdown currently. Republican Majority Leader John Thune. You can see the dividends on that based upon appointments, confirmations, and the big beauty and things like that happened here over this year. Always some frustration with the Senate because of the filibuster and all of that kind of thing. But ultimately, it's the difference between having a cabinet and all of the executive appointments that President Trump makes or not. Because there's no chance that Chuck Schumer, and he's made that very clear, if he is the majority leader of the Senate after these midterms, he's not going to allow anything. And furthermore, they're going to try to spend us into oblivion, use everything as leverage. You saw they're in a deep minority, and they shut down the government for 45 days. So you can only imagine. This is real life consequences.
And it's the backstop against, like you mentioned, impeachment.
Yep.
Or if there's a vacancy on the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah.
You want to have the United States Senate in that circumstance.
Ask Barack Obama how it feels to have the other party control the Senate when a vacancy opens up in the Supreme
Justice
Court.
Garland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had to learn.
He did. He took it out on us ultimately at the end, though. The guy, as the AG was pretty vindictive.
Yeah.
Pretty vindictive. But, at least he's not there for a generation. So anyway, 53-47 is where we start. Here are the opportunities as everybody layman view as you just look at the map before you know anything that's specific. There are pickup opportunities on both sides. If you put up graphic 1, these are Republican-held states where Democrats are currently competitive. You'll notice your home state of Ohio on there, Johnny, and we'll talk about all of this in more detail. Maine, where Susan Collins resides and has put a graveyard of Democrats to bed over the last umpteen many years. In North Carolina, your home state.
Yep.
So, there's a lot there. And then we've got Alaska, which has just recently come online because of a couple of recruiting quote-unquote successes by Democrats to try to make that competitive. If you look at graphic 2, this is where we start on the Republican side, which is Michigan, New Hampshire, and Georgia.
Seats that Republicans want to pick up. Yeah,
these are Democrat-held seats that there is better than a puncher's chance. Of course, with Michigan and Georgia, you're talking about two places where President Trump won in 2024. In places, honestly, you have had some weak Democratic representation. In the case of Michigan, it's an open seat now, as is New Hampshire. Now, that list expands beyond. There are more opportunities out there than just that, like Minnesota we talked about. There's some new candidate situation that we'll cover with all that. But that's basically where this whole thing starts. North Carolina, of course, was the retirement of Tom Tillis, which sparked an open seat. Anytime there's an open seat in North Carolina, they're guaranteed a couple things. One, it's going to be competitive. Two, it's going to be very expensive.
Yeah.
Democrats, I feel like it's the Democrat version of of New Jersey in a lot of different ways for Republicans, in that they've just never learned the lesson of where the votes ultimately are. They spend $150 million every time out. They have come up short over the last 15 years. But we haven't had this open seat deal in a long time. Of course, Tillis was there for 12 long years. We had Burr, who had it for a number of years. And then, look, that whole thing in 2020 was a great deal for Republicans, in that we solidified both Republican Senate seats, what seemed to be for a while. But with Tillis's retirement, all of a sudden you'd have a void that needs to be filled. And a good friend of the program, former RNC chair, Michael Whatley, came on, announced, got the Trump endorsement. He's basically the candidate there.
There's a lot.
But
There's
it's
a lot
tough.
about this race.
So I want your thoughts.
Sure. So let's start with Michael Whatley. So Michael Whatley has extremely deep roots in North Carolina politics. He is, I mean, he'll never try to take the credit, but he is, to a great extent, the architect of why statewide Republicans on the state level have a supermajority in terms of the state legislature with the Assembly, state Senate, and the state Senate. Republicans have a supermajority and have run that state very well on the state level, with one exception, and this is the big problem, is Republicans have not had success in the governorship for quite some time. And
who's running?
A former governor of North Carolina, Cooper, who has name recognition right out the bag, right? He's a two-term governor, so he can win statewide, which Senate's a statewide race. He has an operation that's won statewide. He's already got the voter lists of people that he's been able to successfully get out to vote in 2 elections to win statewide, and he is able to raise an insane amount of money.
Yeah, he really is. And Josh mentioned this could be one of the most expensive races. Whatley has said that it might be the most expensive race across the map. He said it could be $600 million.
Yeah.
No Senate race, all in, outside money, inside money, on the Democrat, on the Republican side, has ever cost $600 million in the history of our country. He seems to think that this race could have a price tag that high, and part of the reason for that is because Republicans are running against the incumbent governor, Roy Cooper. And now Cooper has a problem. Cooper was in charge of the state when the hurricane hit, and the state did not come to people's aid in the western part of the state. And, I think he's going to struggle with that. If you look at the polls early on in this race, you see Roy Cooper with an advantage. Smug mentioned his name ID. His name ID is the reason he has that early advantage, because Michael Whatley has not held a statewide office. He is not the household name that Roy Cooper is. Over the summer, you're going to see those numbers start to move a little bit as money is spent, advertising is run, and this will become a much more competitive race than what you're seeing right now.
And a very last thing I want to put real quick for you, Wayne, Duncan, a very critical thing to mention about Roy Cooper is, I know everyone knows about Irina Zarutska getting murdered in Charlotte, and the criminal who was let out again and again and again and again, that was on Roy Cooper's watch when he was Attorney General and when he was governor. And his soft on crime policies, which allowed people, he was a huge proponent of letting criminals out, of criminal justice reform, which was why you can't safely ride mass transit in Charlotte and why an innocent person can get murdered is because it was Roy Cooper who championed these policies. That needs to get tacked to Roy Cooper. In North Carolinians' minds, they have to understand this guy had multiple opportunities to make North Carolinians safe, and it's because of him innocent people lose their lives. That's going to be incumbent on the Whatley campaign to make sure that's what Roy Cooper's known for, because right now he's known for the biggest lie that it's, I'm a moderate. Like we just discussed about Abigail Spanberger. Same playbook of he schemes and he tricks people into thinking he's a moderate. He's a left-wing lunatic who let criminals out and didn't care about Western North Carolina.
Yeah, he's going to run like the Abigail Spanberger of North Carolina, who runs a campaign about being a moderate, but governs like a radical left-wing lunatic.
Yep.
And there's a track record there that's smug illuminated.
100%.
And it's incumbent on the Republicans in North Carolina, the campaign, the super PACs, everybody else, to focus in on that stuff. And I think you guys all nailed it on the stuff that is substantive, right? Like, we're not just calling him a radical lunatic in a 30-second ad. There's a track record here on things like crime, like sanctuary cities, like failing to deliver for the people in North Carolina in the flood. Like, all that stuff is
You know what his rise to
very
national
tangible.
prominence was in a very different era?
Also, the trans thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rise to
bathroom
national
bill.
to prominence of Roy Cooper in a very different era in American politics was him adamantly opposing any effort to ensure that men couldn't use women's restrooms if they put a dress on.
Yep.
Right? I mean, and that was a winner for him because the left funded him to the hilt, and he went and attacked everybody who would be so intolerant as not to allow men into girls' bathrooms and locker rooms and all of that kind of. Now, politics of that has all changed. But back to your point about what's incumbent upon the Whatley campaign and the Republican Party, you need to remind people of that because this guy is going to run as the Abigail Spanberger. Recall on Tuesday, there is no such thing as a moderate Democrat. He is case in point
Yep.
on that. He runs as shucks, just one of the guys here in rural North Carolina, understanding your roots and everything. And then he governs as like a lunatic, an absolute lunatic, you know? And so, anyway, this is going to be a race that is a massive one.
Yep.
Massive one.
I don't think Whatley's estimate of how expensive it's going to be is off. I think it's going to be that big.
It could be. The other one that we focus on is Georgia. Georgia, look, I mean, if you've paid attention for more than 5 minutes over the last 5 years, 6 years, Georgia is the epicenter of what determines majorities, minorities, presidents, and not presidents. It has become a very competitive state. Now, you've got people like Governor Brian Kemp, who have done quite well there. You've also had a state legislature under Kemp's leadership that has sort of held the line on it. But everything is always extremely competitive, including the 24 election, where Trump won comfortably, but it's still a very competitive race, and one that everyone pinned the outcome of 2024 on, whether or not Georgia went red or Georgia went blue. So now you enter this sniveling little asshole, Ossoff, who won by a nut hair in 2020, surfing off coattails of all kinds of ridiculous changes and voting behavior and everything else in Georgia. And he went to a runoff, ultimately sneaks in the Senate. I've never seen a United States senator look more out of place than that guy. Like, generally speaking, these people are pretty representative, where they like accomplished. You know, whether you agree with them or disagree with them, they're kind of statesmen in some regards. This is not him.
Yeah, the guy is, in a lot of ways, the accidental senator. And he is a fish out of water when it comes to campaigning around the state, a fish out of water when it comes to delivering for the state. But the guy raises money. And if you look how much money he's raised, you know this is, again, going to be a very competitive state. The nature of Georgia has changed over the last few years. That's why there are 2 Democrats representing the state instead of 2 Republicans, which we had just less than 10 years ago. So this is going to be a very competitive race. Ossoff should be beaten. Republicans should be able to get this. We've got 3 candidates running in a Republican primary. I think all 3 of them have the capability of beating John Ossoff. But in the same way that Trump had to work overtime to win that state in 24, these guys are going to have to work overtime to win in 26.
You know, the thing that fascinates me about Georgia and Ossoff in particular, I think it's totally different than like the Roy Cooper situation in North Carolina. And that is, like, if you looked at like that New York Times map on shifts in the vote in 2024, county by county breakdowns, you saw a lot of red arrows.
Yep.
Right? A lot of red arrows. The thing that I thought was very interesting is some of those donut counties around Atlanta countervailed a lot of what we saw in a lot of other competitive states. They actually shifted a little bit blue. Now, of course, that was swamped by Donald Trump's massive turnout in the rural areas across Georgia, and that ultimately delivered him the state.
Such is the challenge for Republicans in a midterm.
Which is my point to this is in seeing the way that Ossoff has voted here over, the last year, it's not like he's like hugging the middle of the road.
No.
He's voting like a left-wing lunatic.
Yeah.
Like Bernie Sanders' voting record. And I think that calculation from him is, well, Trump voters aren't going to show up.
Yeah,
For all of our listeners in
Dude,
Georgia,
that's good insight.
Yeah, and the
it's true.
Ossoff bet is that the money he raises will insulate him from the left-wing voting record he has tallied up in his time as
but
Senate.
even more critically, the bet there ultimately, you're not going to turn out.
Yeah.
If you're in Georgia, they have made a calculated bet. When they march in to support every one of Chuck Schumer's deals, the government shut down sight unseen. Like he was not, nobody ever asked where he was on the government shutdown. He just did it.
Which is just a wild thing because Georgia's been the epicenter of like the flip-flop back and forth of our politics for the last 6 years. No one ever asked, where's John Ossoff on this?
No, because he's just a left-wing lunatic and everybody knows it, so you never have to question where it is that he falls on any of this stuff. But he's betting because he looks at what we talk about all the time on the program, which is the Republican Party base that used to be suburban in nature at a 78% midterm turnout, and now it's a rural base that has a 57% turnout. And his bet is the gulf between those two things. It doesn't matter.
He wants to raise money and do turnout among the Atlanta areas because he's like, these Republican voters in rural areas, they're not going to turn out to vote.
Yep.
And so he's going to try to just run off the scoreboard in Atlanta and surrounding suburbs.
Well, we got 3 capable Republican
Yeah,
candidates
so let's
facing off in a primary.
toss graphic 4 up here. All right, so this is Buddy Carter, Derek Dooley, and Representative Mike Collins. All 3 of them have called. All 3 of them are friends of the program. All 3 of them will be on the program here in the upcoming weeks. We wanted to delay this to a point where we felt like we could kick off a full midterm preview. So you'll be hearing from all of these guys. Either one of them can win. Right? It's just a matter of figuring out the best campaign. I think the best campaign probably wins that primary, and therefore is best suited to take on Ossoff in the general. But make no mistake, like if you think the 53-47 is a high water that like can't be beaten, you're wrong about that. And it could very well come down to who wins Georgia.
I mean, that primary might not be a bad test to be like, whose operation can bring out a tidal wave of rural Republican voters?
Yep.
Because those are the people that are needed to win this race in the general.
Yeah, you're going to look a lot at where everybody's base of support is, for sure. For sure. So when we come back, we're going to go up to Maine to talk about Susan Collins and then a whole bunch of these other things that we highlighted at the top of the program, including an expanse of the map to these other states that you all live in that are going to have competitive races right after this.
Energy is all around us. It's how we move, how we build, and how we make every day a little easier. We're all around America's oil and natural gas, supporting 11 million good-paying American jobs across the country and powering our way of life. But energy demand is growing and fast. That's why we need to overhaul our broken permitting process to unleash America's abundant natural resources, strengthen national security, and create a future where American energy leads the world. What America builds today will help secure a more affordable, more reliable future with enough energy to go around for generations to come. Our country can't wait. We must pass permitting reform now to help secure American energy dominance. Because when America builds, America wins. America's oil and natural gas. Paid for by the American Petroleum Institute.
Okay, so what you have to understand about a Senate Republican majority, and maybe it's worth a little bit of an exploration as to what it is that we did for a living before we did this. And we were in charge of it for the better part of a decade, actually a little over a decade, where you would recruit candidates and you would run these campaigns all in an effort of trying to get a Senate Republican majority. We were successful in 2014, held on in 2016, gained seats in a very tough 2018 year, and then we had this horrible Georgia runoff situation in 2020, which of course President Trump lost his reelection, and so too in a runoff did we lose 2 seats in the great state of Georgia that we talked about. But in order to get a map together, you have to steal something somewhere in a state that isn't red, that isn't about having the most conservative candidate available. It's somebody who can reliably win in a state that otherwise would be probably a blue state. And for Democrats, they used to do that with like Joe Manchin in West Virginia, right? Or John Tester in Montana. People who are winning seats they had no business winning, but they could steal majorities because they flipped the map in some ways by renting it. Remember 6-year terms? You rent it for 3 straight cycles at that point when you do that. Susan Collins in the state of Maine has done this for the Republican Party for a very long time. It is a very Democratic state. It is not competitive at a presidential level. Donald Trump has gotten his doors blown off there 3 times. We've had trouble being competitive at a congressional level. It is a difficult northeastern New England place where Republicans have had a large prohibition to victory just based on what the electorate is and what motivates them. That is not applied to Susan Collins. Susan Collins has swum upstream into headwinds every time she's been up. And I think the last one in 2020 was a pretty good example when Democrats thought, well, this one's in the bank. Mm-hmm. They had this, they changed the voting rules. They went to ranked choice voting, and all in the hopes of taking Susan Collins out.
It wasn't just the Democrats. The media had entirely written off as a foregone conclusion that, well, of course, Susan Collins is going to lose. Like I think it's one of the biggest failures of journalism in the entire election cycle is they not only got it wrong, they stopped talking about the race because these journalists bought hook, line, and sinker what Sarah Gideon and these Democrats at the DSCC were telling them about how Susan Collins doesn't have a chance. And I understand she might not be your cup of tea, but I mean, if she's a rhino, she's your rhino.
So
she's your rhino. Right. Okay, we have no other choice.
Well, you wouldn't have a Supreme Court
exactly.
without her. Right.
Kavanaugh, who was maligned, he ends up on the Supreme Court because of a person like Susan Collins.
Yes.
Like, that is politics.
So last time in the 2020 cycle, Susan Collins faced Sarah Gideon. It was just basically one person. It was an anointing for the Democrat. Right now, Democrats do not have the same situation. They have a hot primary between the governor, Janet Mills, and this upstart lunatic.
Yeah, the guy with the Nazi
tattoo. We've talked
tattoo.
about a bunch on this show. And both of them have released competing polls showing them up like 5% over the other one, or the other one says 5% over the other one. You don't actually, Maine is actually a very, very difficult place to poll.
Yeah.
Historically, it just is. And I think that Susan Collins is in a position, if you look at the numbers, the one thing that's nice about her being there so long is you can get a body of work on polling about her that gives you a better idea of how she looks than a brand new candidate on the Dem side. So she is in the exact same, if not better, position than she was in 2020. Democrats are fighting amongst themselves and ruining their images heading into a general against her. She's going to be a juggernaut. I like her holding on to this seat.
Yeah, and One Nation, I think, just reserved like $40 million in the state. SLF did.
Yeah. If you come to a live show, I'll tell you a little bit about some of my experiences with Donald Trump. Talking about the great state of Maine back in 2020. I got some good stories.
Yeah.
I got some good stories.
Oh, I've heard these stories.
But they can't be recorded. So we'll have to do it live. But they're very, very funny because he's focused on this stuff. And, you know, people make a big deal out of the fact that there's differences between the Trump administration and Susan Collins. Like, I'm sure that everybody within the Trump administration would love if she was a more reliable Republican vote. The fact is she wouldn't be elected if she wasn't. So this is one of those like swallow your tongue type deals for the rest of us in terms of where ultimately you want a Senate majority versus what's the perfect Senate majority. Because you don't have one without people like Susan Collins, and she's been tougher than nails on the stuff that matters. The Kavanaugh thing will forever change my view. I mean, I'll defend her to the end of time based on that one. That radicalized me personally.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that we knew Brett Kavanaugh, he's a good man. I mean, total family man. And Democrats tried to Me Too the guy with an absolute fabrication, and she didn't stand for it. And she was the deciding vote about whether they win and fundamentally change history, because it's not just about that Supreme Court seat. If they win doing that kind of tactic, who knows what the world looks like today?
Right, but the reason she wins in Maine time and time again is because she's not afraid to go against her own party. That's something that people in Maine pride themselves on being independent thinkers. She really has a finger on that pulse.
Yeah.
And so I think she's the favorite here.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel better about it than I do in 2020. But moving on to Michigan, which is a state that has bedeviled Senate Republicans for many years. It's been since Spence Abraham, since a Republican has had a United States Senate seat in the great state of Michigan. But they've gotten darn close in recent years. And then, of course, the 2016 victory by Donald Trump and the 2024 victory by Donald Trump has given Republicans an awful lot to crow about in terms of their ability to make this a very competitive state. Made much easier when the incumbent decides he's retiring. That's, of course, Senator Gary Peters. He is out, and now you have, again, an open primary, just as we talked about in Maine. Look, everybody likes to focus on these Republican primaries. Mm-hmm. Democrats have a very unique situation this time around in that there is a huge amount of energy and funding behind candidates who fundamentally are out of step with their states. In Maine, you got that Graham Plantner guy who's an absolute lunatic, but he's beating Janet Mills, a former governor, any poll. I mean,
Janet Mills is like 3,000 years old.
3,000, a perfect Chuck Schumer recruit, right? If it happened in like the early 2000s, he's all for it.
Almost as old as Ashbrook.
Mills has money, and she claims her polling shows her ahead.
Yeah, well, she claims, but I haven't seen it. All I've seen is the public polls in which she's getting her ass kicked by a literal psychopath with a Nazi tattoo.
I mean, think about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's going on there. So if you go to Michigan, though, we've got a similar situation, right? I mean, you've got former health director of Wayne County, Abdul El Sayed, who I have imagined is taking advantage of the quote-unquote Michigan problem.
Right. The problem that you're describing on a Democrat primary level is magnified X number in the state of Michigan, where they don't get along precinct by precinct. And one of the interesting things that I've heard that's starting to develop is that this woman, Haley Stevens, is running a campaign, and the other two are basically Twitter candidates.
That's what I've
it's a
heard.
State Senator Mallory McMorrow and Representative Haley Stevens are the other two candidates involved in that. And again, though, you've got a grassroots versus establishment recruiting and support problem that's playing out there. And honestly, you look at the polling, I don't know, man. Like, at this point, it's got 27 McMorrow.
No, it's 27 with Stevens.
24 McMurrow, and this El Sayed guy was 16. I mean, you're early on in the process.
Right.
That
A third
can go anyway.
of the voters are still undecided. And I think, Ashbrook, your sources on that are 100% correct, because you basically only hear about El Sayed and McMurrow, who has just been a lot of an online like media darling, who they've been like constantly pulling for this lady for like, it feels like a decade now, for any time she runs for office, all the like online journos in Brooklyn, because it's like she's a Brooklyn candidate. Like all her friends are in Brooklyn, all her beliefs come from Brooklyn. That's why she's ever gotten any traction. And so journos will do write-ups about her, even though she's running in Michigan.
Well, and also journals, like, they like to countervail what they think is going to happen sometimes, because that's sexy and interesting.
Yep.
You know, and it's like Haley Stevens, who I think has the personality of a fucking rock.
Yeah.
Zero. But
you're not wrong,
I
dude.
mean, and she puts her foot in her mouth like every other day.
Yeah.
But like, for a risk-averse like Democratic establishment in Washington, D.C., she's the perfect candidate.
Well, it's certainly better than the Dearborn candidate.
Well, yeah, but like,
Right.
she came up at the same time that like Alyssa Slotkin came up, and
Yeah.
like, these were women, you know, who won, you know, swing districts, you know, in I think it was 18 or whatever. Anyway, my point is like, she's the safe pick, and so like, she's like the DC pick, I think, of that primary. But what I'm curious in, and I hope this is a fun thing we get to enjoy over the course of this cycle, especially in complicated primaries on the Democratic side like this, is like, what are all their opinions of Chuck Schumer?
Yeah.
Are they going to vote for him?
Well, they've done a little reporting on all that, and it was noticeably quiet. out there in the
Interesting.
field. Yeah.
I think we need to hound these people and get them clear and on the record.
Yeah. There's some of them that clearly are all in for getting the largesse of his super PAC. And then there are others who are like, are you kidding me? Everybody fucking hates this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
given the politics in the state of Michigan, you got to think that the wedges that are driven in a Dem primary will last through to a general, and Republicans are fortunate to have Mike Rogers running again.
So you've heard him
so close. You've heard him on the show.
You've heard him on the show. He was on here when he announced, and that is consolidated on the Republican side. He is the candidate. He's Trump endorsed. He is moving forward, and he came within an eyelash of winning the thing in 2024. It is, in states like this, it's been my experience where you have a candidate the first time statewide comes really close. If they go again, they have a much better set of traction, right? Those relationships are made. They're fresh. People know who they are. You're not introducing yourself to an electorate. You're just showing back up at their doorstep again. And so where we've had a lot of success in picking up Senate seats that are incredibly tough states are exactly the situation that Rogers finds himself in right
Dave
here.
McCormick.
Yeah, it literally,
Great example.
exactly. And that's because people know them, they trust them, didn't work out the first time, but you're building on top of that rather than building from scratch. And I just, look, I like our chances there. I think the environment's going to be tough, as it always is. 100+ years of history of incumbent party of the president not doing well in the first midterm. But this is a place where I think you can buck conventional wisdom in a serious way, and Republicans could pick that sucker up. The next one I want to get to is probably the most complicated of all of them. Senator John Cornyn, he's got a crowded primary. Attorney General Ken Paxton and Wesley Hunt, Congressman Wesley Hunt. You've heard Cornyn and Wesley on here. Obviously, they're both good friends of the program. I've met and talked with Ken Paxton on a number of occasions over the last decade. Know him to be a solid conservative and a decent guy. A lot of baggage there that people are trying to suggest could be problematic in a general election, which is, of course, the battle lines that are being drawn here. I think the bottom line is you're damn close to a three-way primary here, with an incumbent senator in Cornyn who puts this thing away if he's a general election candidate, because that's what he's done since 2002. But there's an awful lot of angst within the Republican Party, and the MAGA side in particular, that is interested in having somebody that adheres more closely to the president from an ideological standpoint. Enter Wesley Hunt and Ken Paxton. How this whole thing plays out is interesting because ultimately there's a runoff system, and you got a three-way really competitive primary. But if you don't breach that majority mark, it goes to a runoff and they take the top two. So you may have not one, but two potentially votes in this primary, and who gets eliminated and the means by which they get eliminated make this a fascinating election in a lot of ways, because I don't think there's any easy way to ballpark it.
So I may be a simple guy, right? But I have always felt like when Democrats have someone like Ossoff's a perfect example of, like, you may have a lightly red to a purple state, and if the Democrats win a Senate race there, the person that becomes the senator is a left-wing lunatic, like goes straight off the handle, and that's in like a purple state. So if we have a red state like Texas, I want the senator there to be like a prepper who eats rattlesnakes. You know what I mean? Like, I want them to be like so far to the right that he makes me nervous. Like, this guy could be dangerous to everyone around him. That's how far right I want my candidates to be in red states. Like a senator from Oklahoma, a senator from Florida, a senator from Texas. I want them to be so far right, like, they've got more prepper stuff than Duncan would ever have. Like, that's how far right I want the candidate to be. And I feel like a lot of people think the same way when it comes to a Texas Senate
Well,
race.
quite obviously. And I think you look at an Emerson poll that just came out with Paxton at 27, Cornyn at 26, and Hunt at 16. There's a whole bunch of different amalgamations of that same thing. But the bottom line is like you're kind of looking at what appears to me to be a runoff in some ways. I've known John Cornyn since 2002. He is no liberal, I can assure you. I know there's plenty that MAGA types shoot at in terms of negotiations and things that he's had to be in as a part of Senate Republican leadership. He was a whip for a lot of different years. this guy's a pretty solid conservative. I mean, he's not going anywhere on key votes. He's always with you on that stuff, and he's not Susan Collins, right? I mean, we talked about the benefit of having a main Susan Collins type. That's not what's happening with John Cornyn. The question is, for Texas primary voters, is whether or not you can get what you're talking about, which is the prepping
I
at
want
rattlesnake
suppressed
eaters.
full auto machine guns legalized. That's what the Texas senators should be introducing.
And the one other thing about Texas with a runoff, and having worked in Texas politics a little bit, the composition of the electorate in a runoff going to be a lot different than primary day.
It is a lot different.
And a lot of people don't realize this when they game out this situation.
Yep.
So if you're like somebody like an incumbent like Cornyn, you got to be worried about a three-way race where you may not be able to clear that threshold on primary day because they end up in a runoff. The composition of the electorate changes. It's more people who like to prep and what were you saying about the rattlesnakes?
Eats rattlesnakes
Eats
alive.
rattlesnakes?
I want alive.
Yeah, people who are very, very conservative are going to show up in a random runoff that isn't a regular primary. And the composition electorate entirely changes. It changes your calculus.
Well, I think the fellas here on the Ruthless Variety Program ate rattlesnake.
We did.
At the Iowa Fair
Doug
with Doug
Burgum.
Burgum.
We did.
Burgum.
But
And we have preppers amongst us.
We do. Buddy, you made a very astute point about the difference in the electorate on primary day and runoff day. I think we should also mention the Democrats have a primary of their own. James
Yes.
Tallarico,
Yes.
lunatic upstart, and Jasmine Crockett.
So this
a
is-
favorite of the program, and we're all kind of hoping she makes it through that primary, but it's very tight.
And there's-
Tallarico may have a lead.
It's going to be an interesting primary. I'm not going to say it on there. I'm sorry. We'll wait. There's a lot of stories about Tallarico, and he's extremely litigious.
This is Pastor OnlyFans.
There's a lot of stories out
Right?
there about this
Allegedly?
guy. Allegedly, there's a lot of stories out there. Feel free to Google it. He can't sue you for Googling it. He's very litigious, and his lawsuit, he will send them out left and right because he's trying to sue people from keeping this stuff from getting out. Feel free to Google it. There's a lot of stuff out there, and I wouldn't put it past Jasmine Crockett to put it out there herself and end this dude.
Jazzy Jazz.
Yeah. Smug's
Jasmine
DMs
Crockett,
are open.
if you're listening, my DMs are always open, and it happens so much in Democrat primaries.
Yeah.
If
They
you're an
come to
operative
us.
on that, send it my way. Send it. My DMs are open for Dem operatives, and
He'll
Jasmine
launder the
Crockett-
shit out of it for you.
Jasmine Crockett, if you're listening, put it out there. Put it out there.
In their, listen,
It'll end him.
Their primary will not be inexpensive. The Republican primary, not inexpensive.
Right.
We talked about North Carolina maybe being the most expensive state on the map this cycle. I actually think it's going to be Texas because that state has
Oh,
so
it's
many media
massive
markets.
media
It's so
markets.
gigantic. And
Yeah.
if you have a primary and a runoff and a Democrat primary, I mean, this state could be $750 million. Wow. Most expensive Senate race in the history of our country.
Yeah, look, we're not in the business of litigating all the oppo that's being dropped on various Republican candidates. They can come in and drop it themselves if they want. There's been a concern about Ken Paxton and the number of things that have come up over the last few months in his capacity to win a general election, even in Texas. Now, Jazzy Jazz, I think, makes that a little bit easier in that she seems, from all accounts, to be totally unelectable in a place like Texas, but they're trying their hardest. And I'll just remind people, in Alabama, we elected Doug Jones, a Democrat, in Alabama just, 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's not impossible. You got to keep an eye on all of that stuff. This is one we're going to follow very closely. They'll all come on. We'll talk to them all. And, Wesley, we didn't talk about a lot. I think kind of a surprise to a lot of people that he got in. Ruffled some feathers that he got in, but his administration ties have been extremely tight. And I think, look, how this whole thing pans out, I'm still going to be a friend of Wesley Hunt no matter what. He's a great guy. But this is one of them that has from a financial allocation of how to keep your majority, perhaps profound impact.
And
on
again,
how this
Jasmine
thing
Crockett,
ultimately-
if you're serious about winning it, just put those skeletons in his closet. I mean, it's a Google search. It's not just the quote unquote OnlyFans stuff. It's next level past that. Jasmine, put those skeletons out and you'll win it.
Yep. All right. So when we come back, Dan Sullivan, a senator from Alaska, has got a challenger that we're going to have to look into a little bit, and a lot more states right after this. Okay, so another state that pops up from time to time because it is a little difficult, again, to poll, and difficult because it's not part of your lower 48 news cycle very often, is Alaska. Incumbent Senator Dan Sullivan, who's a very good guy, a veteran, a very smart dude, but an understated guy. I mean, this is not somebody who's out banging his pots and pans on talk radio or Fox Prime Time or anything like that. Like he does the job. And so therefore makes it a little bit more vulnerable to flashbang sort of jingly keys of a Democratic recruit. And so that's what's happening now. In the entrance of the race by Representative Mary Peltola. So she has filed, and that was the Democrats' top recruit, Chuck Schumer's recruit for it. And they actually a new poll that was put out by the DSCC. So you take it for what it's worth.
That's the Democrat Senate congressional.
Yeah. Yeah, take it for what it's worth, and then you know where the partisanship lies on that. But they have her winning 49-47. I doubt that, but I do think it's competitive as all hell. And again, it's a difficult state from a lot of different capacities in order to have national recognition. But if you're talking about a Senate Republican majority, it could be decisive in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's a state that leans right, obviously very rural. There aren't a whole lot. I mean, it's not as expensive as some of these other states like Texas and North Carolina that we've talked about. And what Republicans learned in 2022, campaigning against the Democrat who is announced as a candidate, that if you spend a little bit of money against her, she can be defeated. There was a time when she was endorsed by Lisa Murkowski, not the most favored person among conservatives or listeners of this show, but she's a very important figure in the state of Alaska. Lisa Murkowski has endorsed Dan Sullivan. That means a hell of a lot in that state. So don't overlook that. Don't overlook the 2022 race where this Democrat candidate came in third place after a little bit of money was spent against her. I like Dan Sullivan hanging on to this, but I do think it's going to take some resources.
Well, and back to Holmes's point about the polling here is all over the place, all the time in Alaska.
Ranked choice is hard to...
There's basically, it's funny, in our world, in the consultant world, there's like Alaska specialists.
Yeah.
You know, you always see the same names attached to it and the same pollsters and everything else.
Right, you kind of have
you've
to
done
be.
it. Yeah.
Well, because the public polling is dog shit.
It's horrible.
I remember when Sullivan was running against Al Gross 6 years ago.
That's right.
That all of the public polling had them dead heat.
Yeah.
And then like Dan Sullivan won by
in a walk. Yeah.
I think Al Gross won like 41% of the vote.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like, you know, there's a lot of noise out there.
Yeah, and I talked to Sullivan's chief of staff a couple of weeks back. He wants to come on the program, so we'll get him out there and make sure that you all are introduced to him.
Can we go out to Alaska?
Bear rug. This could be a bear rug situation.
So
that's a great
have you
idea,
gents
dude.
been to Alaska?
Never.
No.
Dude, it is wonderful. It is like paradise. Like
believe
there's
it.
so many parts of this country that are just like mind-blowingly beautiful, and Alaska is one of them. I'm talking about like if you're in Anchorage, if you're in Skagway.
Yeah.
It is the stuff of dreams, and the people there are awesome.
Dude, I really-
wonderful
I
folks.
wanna
I
go
love
so
that
bad.
state so much. Beautiful place.
If we go, will you stay in an igloo?
I'd happily. Dude, you will love it, dude. There's fishing out there. It is tremendous.
Dude, I want to go so bad.
Great place.
We need to go this year.
Yeah, let's do it.
I love it. Okay, all right. So your home state of Ohio. This is a big one. People have thought in recent years that and Florida, which used to, back in 2000, 2004 and everything prior to that, Ohio and Florida were the two states that determined which way the country was going in majorities and presidentials and everything else. Both have gotten very, very red in recent years, but there are still an incredible number of competitive elections there, particularly when you have somewhat of an open seat, or at least people who have not run statewide before. Such is our situation now with J.D. Vance ascending to the vice presidency, and all of a sudden you get John Husted, who's the new senator, who's doing a whale of a job.
Good guy. Great guy to hang out with.
Doing a whale of a job, but he's got people lining up, and at this point, Sherrod Brown is somebody who, could make things interesting.
Yeah, Houston's been on a statewide ballot several times in different iterations. Of course, he's filling out the remainder of the J.D. Vance term right now from a Mike DeWine appointment. Sherrod Brown, the Democrat, he's been elected statewide in Ohio many, many times, and
The guy's the rash that won't go away.
he always votes further to the left of the state than anybody would understand.
Yeah.
I think, or anybody would care to figure out. But he works the state really hard. So this is going to be an incredibly competitive race for John Husted. I think John Husted is going to win this, and let me tell you why. Because the guy has worked around every single county for as long as I've been in this business. When I first started, I remember him, and he was really young. I mean, at the same time, you guys make fun of me because I'm old. But he was really young at the time, and the guy was working the state like crazy. And I think he's going to come out on top. I think this state is a red state, but it will be competitive, and you will see some shock polls where they say, "Oh, Sherrod Brown looks looks like he's going to be able to pull this off." Well, Sherrod Brown has won statewide for a long time. His name ID is very high. This is a competitive state. The one other factor for this Senate race that you got to pay attention to is a competitive governor's race between Vivek Ramaswamy and Amy Acton, who was the COVID czar in the state.
Wow.
It's incredible to me that is an actual competitive race.
It's a competitive race because the state, while it is more red than it has been in the past, when you talk about it being the bellwether, so goes Ohio, so goes the nation, it still has Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati. It still has pockets of blue voters. And so the trick is, just like with every other state, you have to turn out those rural Trump voters if you want to win.
I think the real trick is the Ohio people being tricked by Sherrod Brown over and over again.
It's unbelievable to me.
It's like, oh gosh, he doesn't wear a blazer and he rolls up his sleeves. He must be a moderate, And this guy's a lunatic.
It's like battered wife syndrome with some of these voters with Sherrod Brown,
He lived in my building at 425 Mass when I was a chief on the Hill, and lived a couple of blocks away from the Capitol. He was there, he lived there. He didn't live in Ohio.
No. And that's,
he got out. Do you think he still eats Skyline?
I'm going to pretend like a motherfucker that he likes the red food-dyed noodles.
But the same as John Ossoff, he's also raising a hell of a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one thing I'll say about John Husted is when we were at Senator Haggerty's event, we got to hang out with John Husted for a bit. This is like,
I remember this.
Backstage, just hanging out with him. And I tried to give him a hard time because whenever you have someone from Ohio, I'm like, my friend Ashbrook tortures us with about how much Ohio is great. And I was like, is that like a problem with you people? And he gave the most sincere from the heart answer on how much he loves Ohio. And I mean, it left an impression on me. If someone can say such wonderful things about Ohio, it's clear to me that he is someone who's been every corner of that state and holds it dear in his heart. He's the right guy for the job.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. But that is going to be one to watch. Don't write that thing off. Husted will come on too. We'll talk to his people. We'll make sure that he's on here. Iowa. So you've heard from Ashley Hinson, long-time friend of the program. In fact, she was one of our tour guides in our initial Iowa State Fair. Mm-hmm. We've been there a couple of times. She's been... I don't know how we would have made it around without Ashley Hinson. She is an extraordinary person, extraordinary family, an incredible representative of the state of Iowa. But this seat has become open because of the retirement of Joni Ernst, the incumbent senator. Anytime you have an incumbent retiring and it's an open seat, particularly in a place where Democrats have had some success over a period of time, you got to keep an eye on these things. All that being said, I think she's going to blow the doors off of whomever comes at her. I mean, this is it. You spend 5 minutes with Ashley Hinson, and you're like, what do you need? You know what I mean? She's got one of those personalities who is both an advocate for her state, has a way of convincing you of her point of view, but it's just personable and real.
And also, that state of Iowa, you like to bring up, and this is an important point, it was not always a red state.
Yep.
And, it was until recently a blue state, and it took the Iowa Republican Party, huge credit. They've built this great farm system where they cultivate, recruit great candidates, support candidates all the way up on their journey from being, a city council person to state assembly to all the way up. They do tremendous candidate recruitment, and they support the party and the GOTV operation. So you should never take Iowa for granted. I remember how much Democrats we're trying to convince the media that like we can turn it blue, and then they do that so that they get more
remember that
investment into
poll?
the state.
The seltzer shock poll.
Exactly. So they can try and get
Down
more investment.
13.
So they're
Lost
gonna
by 17.
They're gonna do whatever they can to get money in there and cause more problems.
Yep, 100%. She's going to face off in a general against a state senator named Zach Walz. I hope this is the only time that I read his name.
Hopefully, yeah.
But if it's not, I'm going to read a lot more about him. And you're going to hear a lot more about him here on the Ruthless
Yeah.
Variety program, because I can promise you this. She's not going to lose that seat. And if it takes an awful lot of effort from all of us who are involved in this, she's the kind of person that you'll want in the United States Senate.
she's
And
great.
so I'm going to put my back in on that one. I know all you guys will too. Louisiana is a complicated situation. You have heard Senator Bill Cassidy here on the program before. He's sort of a healthcare expert within the Senate Republican Conference. Hasn't always seen eye to eye with President Trump for obvious reasons. And ultimately, President Trump made an endorsement against an incumbent senator. Typically, that's not done. President Trump did not do that a single time in his first term. So this is a novel experience, and we don't know exactly how it's going to work its way out. He endorsed a woman named Julia Letlow, who, of course, if you recall, she became a congresswoman. Her husband, who was elected to Congress, passed away in the COVID era from COVID prior to taking his seat. Just an awful, terrible story. She's become a very, very talented representative. I understand the endorsement on that side, but it's going to make for a very competitive primary environment. And they've got runoffs and things there, too.
Yeah.
Where it's not as complicated as who's got 40 versus who's got 38.
That's and dude, there's also the statewide, the treasurer in Louisiana is also running, and that guy's got a well-capitalized campaign. So this is going to be extremely competitive down to that primary day in May, which is actually on a Saturday.
May 16, right?
You got to think
Yeah.
that the turnout will be extremely low on a Saturday primary. So it's probably going to a runoff. I don't remember the date of those.
June 27th
okay.
is a runoff there. And,
Okay.
and that's, again, you were talking earlier, Duncan, about what the Texas electorate looks like from a primary date to a runoff date, and you're dealing with a fraction of the electorate that shows up in a presidential election. This is another one in particular. It might be more in Louisiana, and we've seen this play out over a number of years, where you're dealing with a real finite number of voters that are coming out, and it's really hard to gauge ultimately who's on top. But it is, look, absolutely essential that you're not talking about Louisiana in November.
And the thing, so Louisiana it's a wonderful state. I love Louisiana. Great time to be had. I love dining at Commander's Palace in New Orleans, and so my endorsement is
Good plug.
My endorsement is open.
Oh,
I think everyone there should be fighting for it. And you can bring me down.
I think everybody there should be fighting
Get me a
for
nice
it.
table at Commander's Palace.
We're
every
not
time.
above that.
I'm not above it.
We can toss our endorsements.
Yeah.
around. We can be bought.
You know, it's content too. Everyone wants to see me have a great time in New Orleans.
Bought for a beignet.
Yeah, I know. That's the funniest part.
Hilarious.
Bidding starts at a beignet.
Crawfish étouffée.
Oh, that's so good. All right, so that's going to be a big one, and I hope we're going to hear from those candidates. We have not talked to the Letlow campaign. We will talk to the Cassidy, I think, had emailed about a potential appearance, so you'll hear from all of them. And then what was the treasurer?
Fleming? Is that Fleming? Yeah, Fleming.
So, yeah, we'll try to get everybody for you, for those of you who are listening in Louisiana.
And for the new listeners, this is what we do every election cycle. Every primary, we invite every candidate because it's up to you, the listener, and the voters to decide.
Yeah, and we used to have a job where we had to care.
So you're like, now I don't have to worry. It's may the best man or woman win.
I better be charmed.
Yeah, that's the thing. Commander's Palace, you know, the brunch is a tough ticket. They get the jazz band. It's wonderful. It's great. So you get me a ticket to that.
Whoever brings the most beignets.
Yeah.
My constituency used to be a whole bunch of powerful people who were counting on like sound decision making. Now my constituency is just you listening.
Content, whatever makes the listeners the
It's
happiest.
you listening.
That's what
and
matters.
So that's what we're going to provide. We're
Yeah.
going to provide, and if you come in and you're a stiff and you suck,
Yeah. And if you don't bring us down to New Orleans, you know,
it'll be yeah.
Wait, now they're bringing us down there.
If I'm not wrestling an alligator with the boots by the end of it.
And if I'm flying scheduled,
that's the thing. I didn't want to have to be that clear about it, but come on.
Dude, I'd actually love to see Smug on a fan boat in the bayou.
Oh, it'd be the best.
See, the people would love it.
With his rubber boots.
Yeah,
Everyone would love it.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one, Minnesota. Look, I don't have to tell all of you
Boy, oh boy.
that over the last 6 weeks, this has become a very tumultuous situation. Literally, the heart of liberalism has descended upon Minnesota to try to make a deal out of not following the law, whether it's defrauding you of $8 billion or trying to pretend as though people who come here illegally and rape people and murder people should be here to stay, and the federal government has no business escorting them out of the country. This is the place where they have fought. I grew up there. I can tell you the vast majority of Minnesotans do not agree with that point of view, despite the fact that the governor does, the attorney general does, the lieutenant governor does, the entirety of the Democratic leadership. Amy Klobuchar, don't pretend for a second that she's some moderate. They all believe it. Elon Omar, all of these people have literally put together a crime organization to pay themselves and their constituencies to remain in power and protect them against the law. That's what they've done. And I've heard from an awful lot of my friends and acquaintances in Minnesota that they think that this thing is boiling over, that there's a whole bunch of people who, for the first time, believe that what Democrats are up to could convince a number of people who are probably fiscally conservative, not socially conservative, or not particularly into a bunch of stuff, are not real happy about being completely jacked on their tax dollars, not going to where they're going to go and being lied to and everything else. But the real problem the Republicans have had there, and I talked about this several weeks ago,
Yep.
we've nominated frickin' clowns statewide time and time again. They've got this weird endorsement process. I've been to one of them all the way back in 2002, which, by the way...
What is that like? What is the situation? What is that?
It's a state convention, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Star Wars bar.
Is it like what is it, the Libertarian Party's presidential one, where there may be a guy who takes his clothes off and runs around?
Yeah, I mean, people who are so detached from reality, they don't have a clue of what it would take to, and I'm speaking generally here. There are a lot of
bad state parties.
There are a lot of
brutal.
very, very committed Republicans who are involved in this, but there is an inordinately high number of people who have no idea what it takes to win an election because you haven't done it in 20 years.
Oof.
Right? And so they keep putting up these people who are just have no prayer of winning. So they need a spark somewhere. The kind of spark that we had back in 2002 with Norm Coleman and Tim Pawlenty that just sort of had this magnetism, this charisma. They'd actually done things, but they could go to a bar in Edina as easily as they could go up to the Iron Range and sit at the Union Hall, right? I mean, these guys that could just relate to people statewide.
That's so critical.
In whatever walk of life that they were in. And that is what it takes, because it's a state that's not any different from Wisconsin or North Dakota or Iowa in terms of what their ideology is, but they're probably a little bit more sensitive into whether you're an asshole or not. You hear Minnesota nice, they mean it. And as soon as you're not nice to them, they're fucking assholes. So if you come off like an asshole, you're just never going to get a vote. That's just the bottom line. You're just never going to get a vote there.
Unless you're Somali, then you get $5 billion.
Yeah, well, you get $8 billion. $8 billion.
That's how nice they are.
Yeah, and all kinds of stuff like that.
Super nice.
But it needed a spark,
Yeah.
and they got one.
Yeah.
Michelle Tafoya. You all remember her sitting along NFL sidelines for a number of years as a sideline commentator, incredibly well-spoken, just became political during the COVID era. Has her own podcast and all these kinds of things, where she's become more and more conservative as she's gotten a hard look at what it is that the Democratic Party is up to in her own backyard.
And it feels like, especially given the what all has been uncovered over the past, let's say, month in Minnesota, it feels like a lot of attention is on how badly run that state has been and how much it feels like all the elected Democrats were complicit and in on defrauding taxpayers.
Yeah.
From the top on down, from Walz down to the Mayor Fry.
No, I mean, I
feels
think it's like
all of them were complicit.
it's like a RICO case.
Yep.
I mean, this was deliberate, and I think people are onto that. Now, she's going to have primary competition here. There's a guy named Royce White, who was a forward for the Minnesota Gophers, one of the best high school basketball players we ever had. Transferred out and went to Iowa State. I think he spent a stint in the NBA. An interesting guy. But like I saw him last week as Tafoya was rolling her thing out, and like he's relitigating January 6th. And I don't care how you feel about that. If you want to win a state like Minnesota, you can't do it. You can't. They're done on that issue. That is a settled deal. You can make your arguments all you want. Ultimately, you're going to need collar counties around Minneapolis to produce some serious votes. That 3rd district that we talk about a lot it's a place. You need votes out of that, and they're not open for business on that. But more importantly, it's not relevant to your life whatsoever. These people just stole $8 billion from you. I mean, they're running a crime operation in your backyard using your taxpayer dollars in order to protect themselves.
And that's the thing. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican in Minnesota. You got ripped off.
Yeah.
You got ripped off. So you need to elect someone who you feel is going to win and can get you that money and hold accountable the folks who stole it from you.
Yep. And there's another guy named Adam Schwartz. I don't know him. I think they've reached out to us about having him on. I'd be anxious to get to know him. I don't know anything about him, but you'll hear from hopefully and I'll have Royce on too. I don't have any ill will against. He's a very fascinating background and everything else. I think it's more than any state in terms of what we called the renting the map deal. Mm-hmm. This is one that fundamentally makes Democrats' ability to pick up the Senate anytime over the next decade almost impossible. If you lose Minnesota, if you're a Democrat, that's like losing Alabama for 6 years if you are a Republican. They just count on it. They put it in the back pocket and they move on. So anyway, that's a big one. So look, that's the early map. There are more states. Obviously, there are more people running. And Cotton, by the way, is completely hilarious. Tom Cotton. Mm-hmm. He when he's in cycle, who file against him because he's 80% people love him. A homeless guy will file against him, and he takes it as seriously as if he is being run against by Donald Trump. I mean, it is the funniest thing of all time. That's why he's so successful at what he does. And so I feel compelled. He's gonna call me and be like, "You didn't mention Arkansas." Tom, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. I promise you, you're gonna be okay. But there's a number.
But run like you aren't.
Yeah.
Crush them.
Well, and
that's what I like is he runs super hard every time, takes zero for granted, and he does his job like that too.
You know what else he does?
Don't take Holmes' advice and be lazy and not.
No. Here was my point. What else he does is he does that as hard as he can, and then when things are sort of settled out to where they are, where the guy running in the primary gets evicted from his shoebox that he lives in side of a sidewalk.
Underpass, yeah.
He takes the money he's raised and he gives it out to all the candidates that we just talked about.
Worked in a lot of states
Team
where Tom
player.
Cotton showed up.
Team player. I mean, the guy, he's fantastic. So anyway, what are your early predictions? Talk about the map as you see it. I think that's our question of the day. When you like and subscribe to the Ruthless Variety program, we read all of it, and there's some races that we didn't cover here. We're going to cover everything. We got time. But we wanted to give you an early overview of all of that. Which states do Republicans need to win, and why? When you like and subscribe, we read all your responses and get back to you, in this case, on Thursday. Coming up, got a great interview. Jeanine Pirro. Right after this.
20 days, one historic move, and an unbelievable journey. Melania from Amazon MGM Studios captures the one-of-a-kind transition into the White House, showcasing the planning, pressure, and personal moments that come with stepping into the role of the First Lady for a second time. From logistical complexities to decisions made behind closed doors, the film brings you closer to Mrs. Trump and her family as they return to the nation's capital. See what history looks like before the doors officially open. Melania arrives in theaters exclusively on January 30th, 2026. I want to welcome to the Ruthless program a woman who needs no introduction, Judge Jeanine Pirro, the attorney for the District of Columbia. We're really happy you're on the job, and we're happy you're here with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I mean, you're 6 months in and you're already shaking things up. You're already making things happen. I don't think anybody who's familiar with your CV would be surprised about a second of it. But I wonder if you could just talk about what it's been like over these last 6 months.
Well, it has been a very exciting 6 months. And one of the reasons that I took the job when the president offered it is because there's both a DA component of local crime as well as a federal crime. Look, D.C. had the 4th highest murder rate in the country a couple of years ago. There were crews and gangs running rampant here. This place was a mess. And so for me, it called back to my years and my roots as a prosecutor, judge, and DA for over 3 decades. So I was thrilled to come here. We've made tremendous we've done a tremendous job so far. The president making D.C. part of his Make D.C. Safe and Beautiful program by bringing in federal partners with the surge in August of 2025. Right now, homicides are down 60%, violent crime is down 30%, more than 30%, and we've got a prosecutor's office now that is prosecuting the crimes based on arrests that are made, whereas my predecessor in the Biden administration did not prosecute 60% of the arrests.
Unbelievable.
So when you think about that, you realize that even if the police do the job, no one's being held accountable because the U.S. attorney wasn't prosecuting. We prosecute those cases now. And so we're very, very satisfied, but there's still more to do. But the president, by putting together this federal enhancement, by making sure that we have the resources in terms of law enforcement, has made the district safe, and we will continue with that program.
Well, you know, our country is crawling with these prosecutors, state and local, who are from the George Soros wing of the Democratic Party. They've been installed by the left to let people out of their crimes, not have to serve any time for the crimes that they're committing. Yeah. And I just wonder if the model that you have laid out here in D.C. is one that other federal prosecutors around the country are following.
Well, first of all, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to fight crime. You fight crime by doing investigations, making arrests, and getting convictions, all right? And that's what all prosecutors should be doing across the country. But, you know, we don't even need George Soros prosecutors in D.C. because we've got the D.C. Council that has passed laws that are absurd, whether it is the Youth Rehabilitation Act or the Incarceration Reduction Act. And by that I mean that we were able to convict an 18-year-old who shot an individual, another person, on a public bus and shot him through the chest, but for the grace of God, he did not die. We got the case investigated, the police arrested, we investigate, we convict. We go to sentencing, the judge says, under the D.C. Council's Youth Rehabilitation Act, I think that you should go to college. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. He walked.
Right.
Public place, loaded gun. I would have put him in jail for the gun alone. Forget shooting another individual.
Right.
This isn't difficult stuff.
Right.
But the great part about this job is that we also have our federal component as well, where we can deal with things like corruption. We can deal with some of the cases that are coming up this year. So, for example, the Pan Am Lockerbie case will be coming up in the summer of 26.
It's crazy that it's just now coming up.
37 years ago, 1988.
Yeah.
And the fuselage of the plane was just brought over from Lockerbie, Scotland.
Crazy.
And we'll be trying that case. The Capitol murder case, where the 2 Israelis were killed outside the Capitol Museum, that case is in my office. The shooting of the National Guardsmen, one who died, Sarah, and Andrew, who is still alive.
1 block from our studio.
Right, and that's my case as well. All of those Venezuelan ships that you heard about where law enforcement boarded the ships, who do you think wrote the warrants for those ships? My office. My office has an incredible national security section that does work that people don't even know we're doing. We're fighting cybercrime, cryptocurrency now, with all of these scam centers that are being created in Southeast Asia where they're targeting Americans, and Americans are suffering and falling for their scams. We're partnering with Meta and Microsoft and Google and Amazon to fight this old crime that's being committed in new ways with cryptocurrency. So there's a lot going on.
Well, the national security stuff is obviously a huge issue because we just watched in the last 4 years so many, under the Biden administration, so many people from the other hemisphere somehow conveniently find their way across our southern border. And so I know that you are working overtime to make sure that law enforcement, that you're partnering with law enforcement to make sure that when they find those people, you can take care of business.
Well, yeah, and that's a real problem. I mean, I'm talking about the illegal criminals,
Right.
okay? That whether they're criminals from their own country, whether they're wanted by their own country, and I've had cases like this even when I was a DA, where they commit a murder in their own country and then come here and commit another murder here. I mean, there are so many names I could go through. We don't need to go through it. All we need to recognize is that if you come to this country and you're illegal and you commit a crime, you got to go. You got to go. We're not going to support you. I'm tired of supporting you and providing this safety net for you where hardworking Americans are paying the taxes to pay for Medicare and all this stuff that's happening. I'm talking about the criminals here. It's got to stop. And we're doing that in my office.
Yeah.
We're doing all kinds of programs. I mean, that fight, the good fight.
Yeah. And you've demonstrated that nobody is above the law. You're investigating a very high-profile figure, and I wonder if you could say anything about the Jay Powell investigation.
Well, normally I wouldn't say anything, but Mr. Powell came out and he cried wolf, and he said, "Oh, I'm being threatened. I'm going to be indicted," and all it required of him to do is to get on a phone call. We sent emails. We gave him a deadline. And when we sent subpoenas, he was like, "Oh, poor me, I'm a victim. This is horrible." As if something as simple as oversight should be turned into a political morality play where he is the victim. Nobody's above the law.
Right.
No
right.
one.
And no one will ever accuse you of going soft. And I have one more question I really want to ask you. I mean, you've seen the news, horrible news about the violence that's being perpetrated against our law enforcement, state and local, federal law enforcement in this country.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's something that you're keeping an eye on. I'm sure it is something you're keeping an eye on. But I wonder if you have words of encouragement to law enforcement about how you're going to be out there and have their back.
Look, law enforcement should know that that we have their backs. President Trump has their back, and anyone who takes a weapon, whether it's a gun or whether it's a knife or whether it's a vehicle, okay, and you aim that at law enforcement, you have to expect that law enforcement is going to respond in a way where they're defending themselves. All right, all this namby-pamby leftist stuff is they're playing in the wrong lane. You take a vehicle, you go after a cop, and you try to run that cop over or you injure him in any way, that cop is going to defend himself or herself. That's the way the system is.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Well, it's
Very
good to
lucky to
meet
have
you.
you. Yeah, great to meet you.
Thank you.
And thanks for
and
the work
stay
you're doing.
tuned. A lot going on.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Fellas, what a treat. I mean, I've never met anyone with more energy than her, and she had so many stories that she was telling me off camera. She said she would come in and sit down with us. She would love to do it, and I cannot wait because everything that she's doing. The story is she's got everybody working till 10 p.m. trying to stop these criminals in D.C., and it's working. I don't know if you guys saw these stories about how murder rate is down, crime rate is down. She's having an impact.
We talked to a group at the bar the other night of like these longtime D.C. lawyers who have connections into all of the, the prosecutorial offices and all of this stuff. And they were saying basically that she's improved morale so significantly as she's been in office because she's given them a reason to do stuff. Recall, the big scandal in D.C. was that they would have a shooting. And then they would refer it to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor would be like, "Oh yeah, well, looks like a domestic disturbance to me. Moving on."
It's
so they
insane.
never did anything.
It's unreal. Like that is a story of how in DC essentially they legalized crime, so they could say, "Oh yeah, you see the crime rate drop because we turned every felony murder into like a misdemeanor."
They show up on
slap
scene
the
and they're
wrist.
like, "This is a murder," and then it goes to the next guy and it's like, "Well, this was an assault," and then it gets to the prosecutor and it's like, "Well, this is littering."
yeah.
They're like, "Oh, slap.
Yeah.
Here's a ticket."
The dead body fell on the ground. That's littering. $35 in community service.
It's true. Anyway, people are like psyched up about the fact that they're actually doing
Great
something
to
to
hear.
clean up their homes.
It's almost like that's why they got in that job in the
Yeah,
first
it's
place.
almost like there's people who like want to do the thing for a living when you give them the opportunity. It's amazing. All right, so we want to get to two other quick states before we get out of here. One is New Hampshire, big pickup opportunity. Former Senator John Sununu has entered the race, a very big recruit from my point of view.
Yeah, and another former senator, Scott Brown, is running against him in the primary.
Wait,
Yes.
it's two former senators in there?
Yeah,
Wow.
head to head, right? And this is a state that has always been tight as a tick. I mean, no matter if you have a good cycle or a bad cycle, it's always tight as a tick. And of course, it's an open seat at this point. I don't know. I mean, like,
What are you hearing out there? Because
Look,
it's a very
it's-
mavericky state, right?
It is a mavericky state, and it doesn't have a ton of media markets. But the reality is, it's a state Republicans have won before, and it's a state that Democrats will have to spend extensively if they want to defend it. And if you've got somebody who used to serve in the Senate, who is on the ballot for Republicans in a cycle where they are carrying a message for that state, they can win, and Democrats, I think, should be on guard. And I think they are. I think Democrats are on guard in that state.
Yeah,
So
I mean, the secret
it's
about
it's a tough race.
the secret
I'm not
to-
saying it's
to-
not.
Open seat, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is
Wow.
Jean Shaheen's seat. She's retiring.
Yes, I mean, the secret to the Senate map is that when you're in leadership and all the power of the super PAC of Senate majorities on both sides, the first dollar spent is always to defend a state that you currently have. It's important not only because you don't want to lose anything that you already have, but also there's an internal dynamic, particularly if that incumbent, if it's not an open seat, if you have an incumbent, you have to spend, because you need their vote. It's very important to them that you're committed to their seat in one way or another. Like if you need somebody on something and you're there financially, it's like an easier vote to get.
But being committed to that seat, if you're Chuck Schumer's an expensive proposition. Because
That's why this is such a big one.
Because if you put somebody serious up there in a general election, they got to buy the Boston media
Right,
market
yeah.
to be on television.
Oh.
Do you know how expensive
Dude, that is a good point.
You know?
You think that gives Scott Brown an edge? Because he's won in Massachusetts.
Well, I mean, but you're talking about a Sununu. On the other side, I mean, like,
Right.
this is the name ID is not a problem here.
No,
you
you're
know?
talking
Dude,
about
that's a good
basically
point, yeah.
10,
Yeah.
10 of 10 on both.
That's insane.
So it's going to be interesting how it all plays out. But I guess my point in all of that is that they're going to have to spend so much money
Yeah.
trying to defend that. Any dollar that they spend there, they're not going to be able to spend in North Carolina or in Texas or wherever they think that the pickup opportunity. You hear Chuck Schumer and he's like, "Oh yeah, we're going to do Nebraska and we're going to do all these other things." It's like, well, you're probably not. If we can run competitive races in all these places, and the candidates that we've got, it feels like it's inevitable in New Hampshire that this thing is going to be a tight race.
That's right.
So that's a big one. The other one's Kentucky. And look, tough because we have friends all over the place, spent an inordinate amount of time in Kentucky, got to know the three candidates that are involved extremely well. I mean, honestly, like family. Nate Morris is the outsider candidate. Just got that Elon Musk $10 million infusion, which is going to help out an awful lot because of the polling. It's him sort of in a single percentage versus two well-established Kentucky sort of icons, both young, in Andy Barr and Daniel Cameron. Daniel Cameron, you remember him from the 2020 Republican National Convention, keynote speech for Donald Trump. He was a young African-American attorney general, incredibly gifted from a political standpoint. He's got a substantial lead there in large part because he ran for governor just a few years ago, lost to Andy Beshear, but in the process of that had a huge name ID advantage that at this point in an early race has given him a ballot lead in that race. Andy Barr is a sitting congressman in a district that it represents Lexington, you think University of Kentucky in the middle, but it also stretches out east into a critically important part of Kentucky in terms of those Republican primary voters. He's just a world-class guy. You've heard him on here.
We talking about the Haulers out east? Is that where he is?
No, not that far.
It's not quite the Hal Rogers
Not like
side
Letcher
of
or
the
any of that. Yeah.
but it goes down to Somerset. Like it's close to the anyway. But he's got a base of support there, And Cameron from Louisville, huge vote-rich area, statewide name IDs, got a thing there. A challenge for somebody like Nate Morris is to try to figure out how to split the sort of disenchanted Republican, whether they're east or west, where he's got basically no name ID whatsoever, or up north. What's complicated about this in Kentucky is you got Thomas Massey up there, who is like target A1A of President Trump. I mean, he's made it very clear and put money in from the MAGA PAC to try to defeat this guy in a primary. And that is an area, honestly, if you're looking at the map from a Nate Morris perspective, he has to win it.
Well, especially because you got Andy Barr who's going to have, that Lexington DMA as like a home base of operation of name ID.
Yeah.
And then you've got Daniel Cameron who's going to have more of the Louisville name ID. So like he needs like a place like you're talking about, like Covington or something that, it's a more libertarian outsider strain of the Republican Party. He's got to run up the score there if he hopes to offset what is those natural advantages.
And the president is going to play a huge role here. What's interesting, I'm not sure if you can expect an endorsement on this one or not. You talk to people close to him, and I don't know that that's like an area where they think that they're going to do. But you got Amy McGrath. Remember her from 2020 in her run against McConnell, who's back in the race. And,
She's running for Senate again?
Oh, yeah, she's back in it. And so, like, I don't think there's a lot
She's got a chance, Democrats. You have to send her money.
Send her $200 million.
If she had $3 billion, I think she'd have a shot. Every Democrat, send all your money.
The funny thing is, I can only imagine her campaign. She's like, yeah, we raised $110 million. We can do this again. They get in and they realize they're not running against Mitch McConnell. And they have like $40 in the bank account, right? I mean, it's like, you weren't the thing, lady.
Democrats in North Carolina, send your money to Amy. She can do it this time.
Yeah, she can do it. No problem.
Do it.
Go ahead. Spend it all there. So, but anyway, this thing breaks down in sort of an interesting race. At this point, it's like kind of a two-man, but Morris with that $10 million, you got to imagine his name ID is going to come back up. And it's probably a three-man race in a lot of different ways. Ultimately, am I nervous that we're going to lose that? I mean, under the right circumstances, I mean, they have a sitting Democratic governor in Andy Beshear. Yep. Under the right circumstances for Democrats, it could become problematic for Republicans. But I think I feel relatively confident that that's in the category of...
Around when is the primary date for that?
It's May 19.
Yeah.
May 19.
Yeah.
So also in May is... The Kentucky Derby, and I, unlike Holmes, don't have.
How many selling his endorsement?
I don't know. I don't have friends in Kentucky who've been willing to help me at all or care about me.
Dude, this is the funniest bit.
My mother's always wanted to go to the Kentucky Derby, and I love my mother dearly.
And
so I think what would be helpful is, if I could get a friend in Kentucky who could take me and my mother to the Kentucky Derby and give us the star treatment that she deserves because she's been the most wonderful person in my life.
Your mom wants this.
Your mom's going to need a helicopter to land on the...
That's the thing, on the paddock area, because there's so much traffic.
On the paddock.
You're on the paddock. And maybe you ride in the race.
And we have three gentlemen who are well respected and well funded, and I just want a friend because I mean he's got his friends in Kentucky, and no one's cared about me. But you could, and I'd be happy to help.
Best part about all of this is it's all a derivation of Jeff Yass. If you're listening,
yeah. Or the bear rug.
The bear rug. It's like if you're listening, I could have different thoughts about all of this.
I mean, there's a bourbon trail. We could shoot content out there. We just need a friend out there because his friends don't help me.
It is dude. Look, this is a tough thing about being in this line of work, not having a
friend in Kentucky who can help you out.
A vested interest in these things, other than trying to get you all the information as a listener. In that these people are our friends. I've known these guys for 10+ years. We'll see how it works out. I think it's going to be a fascinating early spring in terms of how that one rounds itself out. A lot more attention, obviously. So that leads us to our question of the day. Just a reminder, what are your early predictions? The Republicans hold the United States Senate. Which states matter? Which will we win? Which could we lose? What do you think the ultimate breakdown is? When you like and subscribe to the Ruthless Friday program, we read all of your answers. It'll help inform us about what's going on in your neck of the woods, and we'll get back to you the very next episode. Great episode, fellas, and we're going to see you Thursday. I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode. Gentlemen, thank you so much to Janine Pirro, and thank you to the listeners. Remember, if you have not yet, go to the YouTube and hit that subscribe because it's more fun in video. So until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay ruthless.